now hustle, 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 get the best grades, hustle, 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 get a good job. The reality is the Indian culture kind of makes it like a rat race.
Half serious academically good student ought to become doctor, if not a doctor, an engineer. And if you are pretty much not good in any of those things, you might end up becoming a chartered accountant. All of it goes wrong, you end up becoming a lawyer. Country of 1.5 billion people. But what we don't at times not recognize is that 1 billion of this 1.5 billion people are less than 35 years of age.
How do you define success for your students? The first question that I want to ask you and get your view on, do you feel that there is a crisis of purpose amongst the youth today?
The crisis word is a bigger word, but I want to begin by saying that I'm so delighted to be in this conversation with you because what you and your organization is doing is so transformative, especially for the young people of India. And so we are delighted as OP Jindal Global University to partner with Sukoon and your initiative. Speaking about your own question, I don't think it's a crisis at all. In fact, I remain amazed by the kind of clarity and the kind of enthusiasm and excitement that young people have. And we see a lot of them in this campus, but also across the country. I travel across the country and I feel, at least India, there is no such thing. I think there is what is there is a differential focus on what constitutes purpose, even what constitutes their goals in life, what are their aspirations, what is the kind of, what inspires them and motivates them to do what they want to do. And I think there's nothing quite uniquely different. Every generation has its own destiny. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, my grandparents would talk about how their next generation was lost or probably did not know the purpose. And my parents' generation would think about the fact that the next generation didn't have it. And then we could at times talk about the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't believe there is any crisis in purpose, but there is definitely a changed mindset and approach to what is it that they look forward in their life.
What do you define as your own purpose? And then how does that purpose kind of manifest itself into JGU, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, so long ago when I had the privilege to study both as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and later at Harvard and traveled around the world, one of the remarkable things that I saw in these institutions is that, and including these societies, is that they placed enormous emphasis on education and the transformative role and the power of education that can build societies. In Indian subcontinent, we had that. Not now, long before we had it. Over 2,000 years ago, India had institutions such as Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi, and Vikramshila. Long before Oxford and Cambridge, which are barely 900 years old, Harvard, which is only 400 years old, Indian subcontinent had institutions that transformed the world of education, where knowledge, creation of it, dissemination of it, and using knowledge for the benefit of society was deeply embedded in our civic culture. Both the pre-independent India and post-independent India saw a lot of shifts, and our evolution in relation to providing that capacity to create a knowledge society ended up being far more limited. So I feel very strongly that we are engaged in an onerous responsibility towards building the future. Young people are our hope. In fact, I have spoken about it on a number of occasions, and I want to repeat it here as well, that we are a country of 1.5 billion people. But what we don't at times not recognize is that 1 billion of this 1.5 billion people are less than 35 years of age. At the dawn of Indian independence in 1947, our life expectancy was barely 35. Today, it is 72. The United Nations has estimated that the next few decades, it'll cross beyond 80, which essentially means that when most parts of the Western world will become older And when most parts of Eastern world, including China and Japan, will become older, India will be younger and will be younger for a longer time. Young Indians, including students at OP Jindal Global University, will be shaping the future of India and the future of the world. And hence, at least my purpose in my own life, and I'm now 50 plus, I can say that to harness the extraordinary potential of youth of India and to translate them to be able to be contributed to the capacity of creating a better society, not just in India, but around the world.
Super interesting, Prof. And I didn't know that India was actually, ahead of the curve when it comes to education. For me as well, I studied in the US, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. These are the colleges that are like the benchmark, but
Yes.
clearly, not.
We
And
had in our
yeah,
history, yeah, in our
and
civilization.
Prof, how would you define? So you clearly are deeply invested into making the youth capable of change, right? If your purpose is to harness the potential of youth and then help that youth achieve great things, how do you define success for your students?
I think the most important part of our effort is to essentially develop, let's say, enlightened individuals who are able to look beyond their self and are able to look at what kind of contributions they can make for the society at large, regardless of whichever career and profession they end up having, including in all walks of life. We, of course, are interested in people with a strong sense of recognition of education and skill sets and learning that can translate into meaningful job opportunities which they are able to fulfill their own goals and expectations, including financial goals and expectations. I also hope that the young people who get educated and are able to develop deeper sense of understanding of the world and the society they are going to inherit, which includes, empathy, understanding of polity and society, understanding and appreciation of the role and emergence and evolution of technology in their lives and how technology can shape the future. I also hope that the young people who graduate from the university are in a position to help build a more pluralistic society, who are able to have a greater degree of respect and appreciation of the other, and in that process recognize that the views and perspectives of people who they may not agree with also should have a voice and identity, and they have a deeper sense of appreciation of democracy and democratic governance, which inevitably will be helping their own future.
Agreed. But, I'm going to push you a little bit on this.
Sure.
I feel that what you've described is the ideal student, right? It's like the Arjuna of students whose mind, body, soul, education, everything is intact. But the reality is, and again, right, I have a kind of an unfair advantage because we do mental health and we're really connected to students. The reality is, the Indian culture kind of makes it like a rat race.
Sure.
Hey, get into the best university. Okay, we've got into Jindal Global for law. Wow, that's an achievement. Now, hustle, hustle, hustle. Get the best grades. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Get a good job, and then it kind of becomes like a rat race almost, right? And especially with new technology coming in, right? AI coming in, the uncertainty of future of, hey, okay, there are X amount of lawyers graduating in India every year. Only X amount get to the top firms, let's just say. So how practically does one define success? Because
Yeah.
how, yeah, it's like,
So I'll tell you. First of all, I think part of the problem is what the society expects as success. And
correct.
frankly, I have never been impressed by that at all. If in that measure of success, I should have been long considered a huge failure. And I'll tell you why. I come from a place called Kanyakumari in the southernmost tip of India. I grew up in Kanyakumari and then later in Chennai. And even a half serious, academically good student ought to become a doctor, if not a doctor, an engineer. And I didn't become either one of them. And if you are pretty much not good in any of those things, you might end up becoming a chartered accountant, which I did not. If all of it goes wrong, you end up becoming a lawyer. And that was the prevailing social norm in the country and in our own society. And things have not dramatically changed. And I challenged it, and generations of individuals. So I consider myself as a three idiots generation. The the movie Three Idiots essentially caught the imagination of India, caught the imagination of many parts of the world, including China. So when you talk in terms of choices that individuals make in relation to pursuing their education and careers, we have come a long way. First of all, we should recognize that it's no longer the case that society does not consider people who pursue other degrees. In fact, we are largely a liberal arts and humanities social sciences university, and in a way I want to say that there has been a tectonic shift in the last 2 decades, and especially in the last decade, where a lot of young bright people are making those choices to study the programs that they end up studying, consciously aware that they are not going to be multi-millionaires. They are not going to be, quote unquote, success being measured in the ability to make a lot of money. Second, while it is true that students, young people face a lot of challenges in that process because of the societal pressures and the other things that we talk about, including social media, and we see that a lot when they are students in any university. In fact, it actually ends up starting in schools, colleges, and universities, no exception, and not just in India, but around the world. You will be very, very happy to know that we also see an extraordinary evolution as they progress in their academic career and as they progress in their professional career. While these challenges can be at times writ large and on your face, especially when they are students in a campus environment, we have 15,000 alumni who are spread around the world and across India. And I can tell you that there is extraordinary success visible in their chosen career paths. And this is not just because they are making a lot of money. They are also invested in ideas and their own self and whatever gives them a greater degree of satisfaction. Because this generation in particular are comfortable even before the pandemic, but the pandemic actually gave even more stronger impetus to those choices that they make, that they are prepared to leave their jobs and find themselves for them if they feel that they're not happy, if they are not satisfied, if they are not given the due respect, if they are not able to feel that they are valued, if they are not recognizing that they are contributing. This is not the case before. People were averse and they were reluctant. They will stick on to jobs and opportunities even if they did not like. So in many ways, I'm quite sanguine about the fact that if given the right ecosystem, and that's where we should continuously work on, all the other things that I talked about includes the fact that we have a strong mental health and well-being ecosystem on campus, so that different students who are facing different types of challenges. And by the way, and you know this very well, this is not a one-time intervention. This is like how learning ought to be continuous. At various points of time in your life and career, you might face different types of challenges. Sometimes when you're in the early years, it may be as a relatively small aspect of a failure in an examination, to a challenge in a relationship, or a bereavement in the family, to lack of being valued in opinions. And as you grow up in life or grow older, you might have health and other challenges. So the need for having a good state of mind that is able to overcome these challenges through a supportive and ecosystem and environment which takes care of the mind and the body in equal measure through these interventions is something that we ought to be doing, and we are very happy that we have been able to develop such an ecosystem in this campus.
Yeah, no, I really resonate with what you said, Prof. And, similarly, I was introduced to this theory of the dark horse theory, which is that when you take a sample size of students, usually the overperformers are the people who are not able to identify as the best students, right off the bat, but they're the guys who've been able to tap into their unique skill stack, their unique interests, their unique virtues, and actually then build a life around that kind of purpose. I think now my plan was to a little bit shift focus on India versus abroad education.
Sure.
We've spoken about this before.
Sure. The most important reason why I would consider young people to look at India and opportunities to study in India, at least for undergraduation, is to be able to help them discover India and be part of an effort to change India and change it for the better.
Sure.
Second, I definitely feel that today, more than ever before, the world has also become a somewhat of a difficult place. The kind of welcoming attitude and approach that many parts of the developed world had, at least the United States that I had experienced when I lived there, studied there, or the UK that I lived there and studied there, or parts of Europe and other parts of the developed world. And it's not, I won't use the word racism, but there is discomfort, there is less of welcoming nature, there is more of interest in the tuition fee that the students bring in, and less on account of the value addedness that individuals provide. Diversity and pluralism are not the most attractive, celebrated words in many parts of the world. In this changing world with its own complexity, and by the way, there are inherent challenges in these societies because of their own internal issues. There is a shift in the mindset as well, and I'm not talking about something that happened today. It's been happening for some decades now. There is a case for Indian students to develop their foundational knowledge, understanding, and skill sets as a part of an undergraduate degree program in one of the Indian universities, and build that capacity here, and then to be able to pursue their educational opportunities abroad. At the same time, I also feel, and this is the third point, is that my exhorting approach towards young people to do their undergrad education in India does not mean that they should not be connected to the world. In fact, we ourselves as a university, and I'm not saying we are unique about it, there are some good institutions in India which do that. We have international collaborations with nearly 600 universities in 85 countries in the world. Every year, nearly 1,000 Jindal students, I'm not talking about graduates, Jindal students go abroad for short-term study abroad program, for student exchange programs, for dual degree programs, and other such immersive experiences. We also host 1,000 students from abroad in our campus every year for various things. So, in some ways, we believe in the idea of global engagement. We recognize the importance of internationalization. We just feel that our students should be able to be connected to India as well. And the fourth reason why I believe we need to promote this, and I think, is that there has been an evolution in Indian higher education. The new generation of institutions, including Jindal, but also others, they are no way less than the best institutions in the world. In fact, our students, when they go for exchange programs, even to some Ivy Leagues, they come back and tell me, and it's not an exaggeration, they say that, and they say it openly, is that the education that they received and receive here is no less than what they ended up getting elsewhere. In fact, I would argue that we give them more attention simply because our faculty-student ratio is better, our attention to their individual students are greater, and we appreciate their uniqueness and their own challenges. We tend to be more hands-on with our students. That's the way in which we have structured ourselves. And the last bit I would say is that, and that's something which I strongly believe, is that 1.5 billion people is a large population, and we are a vibrant democracy. And so when we solve problems in India, we are also solving problems of the world. And hence, I strongly believe that it is also responsibility of every Indian to be able to contribute to this effort. And one way by which they can do that is to pursue some education of their journey in India. Of course, I also will add that when they go abroad, they will have opportunities elsewhere, although that is limiting. You are aware of the fact that there is xenophobia, policies that are discouraging student visas, policies that are putting greater checks and balances on professional visas, including visas for working. All these things are inevitably impacting and adversely affecting it. Nevertheless, I would say that if there are opportunities for people to work abroad, they should do that. But ultimately, I think one of the choices that I hope a lot of young people from India will take and should take is that they want to ask a question: how can they do something for India that they can be part of? But I must tell you that, Vidyut, this is not a one-way problem. we also have to change in India. We can't put all the responsibilities on the part of these students. We need to become better. We need to have better infrastructure. We need to have better, ecosystems and environments which will attract these people when they have opportunities in the whole world.
Yeah. No, so agreed with your points. I just feel that, look, firstly, there's a conversation or there's an argument to be had where is the traditional 4 year or 5 year or 6 year college even relevant anymore? Because technically you're being taught at the pace of the slowest student. Secondly, I think college education wise, purely education, and there's multiple research on this, that a young 18-year-old goes to college to develop in multiple angles of their personality, their life, not just education. Education is about 20%, right? Then there's indoctrination into the prevailing philosophy or political, trend. Then there is a bunch of compliance training that happens. And then there's obviously socialization and stuff like that. And a lot of the times when you're young, you get stuck in feeling that group search for consensus. You want to be part of a group. You feel that consensus is true, but individuals really search for truth. That being said, I studied in the US, right? Didn't go to I didn't go to an Ivy League. I was at one of the UCs, UC Riverside. I would say education was about 20% of what I took home. But everything else, and especially the independence and responsibility given to me as an 18-year-old, was the real kicker in terms of the experience. And we spoke about this, right? In the US, or I don't know how the UK works, but in the US, if you mess up, you get one chance. You mess up again, okay, you've got your last warning. Third chance, you're done. You're going to jail or you're being sent back home. Versus in India, it's almost a situation where, and students feel this, right? Once we go to the questions, you'll see that, yes, they're adults, yes, they can vote, but at the same time, we're still like school kids. We've got our parents kind of supervising us from, what do you call it? The Big Ben or whatever. Uncle Sam is still kind of pulling the strings. And that, I mean, I personally feel, it makes you less independent. Like in the US, I was told, go figure your stuff out. Go make your bed, go do your clothes. You don't want to do your clothes, your problem. And it sounds really very small and stupid right now, but those are big lessons. Get your driver's license, go figure out a business. You want to do an internship, go find your own internship. Versus being in an environment where, okay, I know Friday morning I'm going home and home cooked food will come and da 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 da. So what's your view on that?
So listen, everything can't be changed overnight. So I will say that there are lots of aspects of Indian society which gets sort of extended within the campus environment as well, and that's how we are built. I don't think we need to supplant and replace whatever we are doing with something else. And because all of them are facing different types of challenges in their own right. I think I'll give you a simple example. We took a call early on that 3 people staying in one room is a better model than a single person staying. And it has served us well. Now, if you look at many American campuses or global campuses, there's an automatic, single occupancy. And we know that there are also research has emanated that especially among undergraduate communities, young people, 3 individuals staying together will provide a better sort of a safer and a more, enlightening, evolved experiences. But in more individualistic, isolated societies, the idea of individual autonomy and privacy and space will dominate the discourse. And I'm not even suggesting what is right and what is not. It's just different societies operate differently. And India, we are always used to a more communal living. I mean, everything that we have experienced in our life from our friends and relatives and family and all of that is very, very communal in terms of people living together. Community is part of that. So that being said, I agree with you that education of any kind should help you in that development of that personality, a greater sense of responsibility, and also for you to make informed choices about it and then make mistakes and then recover as well. We do part of it, but it is also the case that the parental involvement in the student, in their child's growth and evolution is very strong.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that the same parent will happily reach out to me as the president and vice chancellor of the university, but when this student goes abroad, they cannot even reach 10 levels below.
Yep.
There's no chance of a
Yep.
communication. People here will call up and send texts and messages and emails. Now, of course, we have been very generous about it, and we respond and we take it, and we feel that's our strength as well.
Yeah.
But those are all huge cultural and societal differences that we are operating.
Yeah.
We have not challenged it. We have challenged on some things. For example, on academic matters, we maintain a greater degree of space, and we don't. There's not a parent-teacher meeting like happens in school. But on some other matters, we are much more open to engaging with the parents of our. But it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. No, and that is exactly correct. I think you've given a great example where today, if the same parent sends their kid to any place abroad,
Absolutely.
you're not getting in the door to even...
Forget getting, they will throw a law at you.
Yeah.
In fact, there are laws of privacy and strong compliance that even health-related information about their son or daughter cannot be shared with them.
Yep.
Forget information about other things. So, in a way, what I'm trying to say is that I don't want to pass a moral judgment on what is right and what isn't, because societies are evolving. Nobody can really say what is right in this. But in the given ecosystem that we are, we treat our students as responsible and young adults. We set the rules and regulations of what is permitted behavior and what is not. We don't even pass moral judgment on what is that not permitted behavior, which can happen outside. But within that rules and regulations, we function. And we take every effort to implement that rules and regulations in the best interest of the students.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this for donkey years. I think there's a case to be made that there should be that barrier where, hey, you can't try to pull favors, or you can't try to pull rank, or just get... I know you guys are very accessible.
Oh, I get all kinds of very interesting calls. Some very important influential people will call and say, my son is so-and-so, or my daughter is, and he wants to stay with these two people who are seniors from the same town, and all of them want this hostel, this room.
Yeah.
This is the kind of, granularity of intervention. And we kind of, I don't shout at them, but I take it in the stride, and, sometimes we try to help, but we don't break the basic norms. We have very good reasons why we like people to stay with students from different parts of the country and the world. What's the point of, talking to people who come from your own city or town or end up speaking the same language? So those are things that have, but one of the things that we have, and this is a larger challenge, is that parental intervention.
Maybe just last question before we get into the student questions. One of the big themes that the students talk about is how they feel they don't have a control or a voice when it comes to policies, where, they don't feel independent. They have this, Uncle Sam always watching over them, and everything, right? Everything from what you said to medical records, to academia, to attendance, everything Uncle Sam has a view on. How to a student, talking to students.
So there are two aspects to this sphere, which is very important for you to know. And students, some of them know, but I want to tell them through you as well in this. Whatever is based upon a regulatory framework of any kind, which is national level regulations, state level regulations, subject-based regulations. It could be University Grants Commission, Bar Council of India, Architecture Council of India, or Rehabilitation Council of India, or various other regulatory bodies which are requirement, or Ministry of Education or state government. That is inevitably need to be followed. And there is no negotiation or discussion on that. Then there are university-based regulations, which university, in the best interest of students, do follow. But then, the moment it is not one of these two things, and the second one we still consult, extensive consultation happens. In fact, our student council is very active. We have elected members of student council from across schools, and whether it is the individual executive deans and deans of the schools of the university, whether it is the chief proctor, the controller of examinations, the registrar's office, the dean of academic governance. We have extensive consultation with the students. Now, consultation does not mean it is actually concurrence of the views of every student or every student leader. Consultation, the purpose of any consultation is to recognize the fact that stakeholders who have an impact on these rules and regulations their views are sought and are evaluated, examined, and ultimately decided whether we can incorporate or not. Ultimately, it is about the institution taking responsibility for its actions. And that is where the buck stops in terms of what we do with it. And I do believe that this is not quite unique. All through their life, they will adhere to it. They better learn to adhere to it early on, because when they go to a work environment, there will be far greater rules and regulations. If they even become an entrepreneur, they will have to be conscious of the various, in fact, the rules will be more complex. It'll have other rules and regulations, and there the consequence will be much more serious. Here, if it's an internal disciplinary consequence, there we are talking about jail sentences, penalties, fines, major inconveniences, sanctions. So the need for accepting rules and regulations and complying with those rules and regulations is a useful practice to inherit early on.
Yeah. So I don't fully agree with that, because I identify as a very big rule breaker, but I do agree with
Yeah,
you.
so change it.
Yeah.
I have no problem in working to change it.
Yeah.
But so long as the rules exist, you better follow.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this. If you have a problem, it's like the same thing, right? If you say, you know what, drinking age has to be less. We have no disagreement. You work through the system, go to parliament, go to legislative assembly. But so long as what the drinking age is what it is, and if the police officer catches a person in that age group, they go to jail or whatever the punishment is. My problem is that we need to build awareness and need for being compliant to it's a tax. Tax is the same thing, right? We feel if you feel you're taxed too much, like now the GST reform has happened. But so long as what it was before, one has to adhere to it. You can't say, this is not fair, I won't follow it. Well, there'll be consequences.
Yeah.
So in some ways, we need to make the distinction between recognition of the fact that these rules are not good and help to work towards changing it. But so long as they are the rules, you better follow it.
Correct. Okay, I think now this is the most sought after section that the students want, which is all their questions. You got about 60 questions in like 24 hours. I'm also going to hand over all the questions to you after, so you can have a view. I'm just going to go through some of the ones that I
Sure.
thought relevant. So the first question, which I thought was quite interesting and long, was why are we so obsessed with admin and the Indian education as a whole? The restrictions on us kill our ability to grow as adults and take responsibility after university. Also affects our mental health adversely. Why is living on campus a necessity? Why is there a limit on gate pass at all? Why is cross entry not allowed? Why are we not allowed to store products that we are legally allowed to own on campus? Consumption on campus being a different subject. Complicated, long question, but please.
So I'll throw, first of all, I think it's a very important thing to recognize that we are not living in a city, but we are living in a bit of a outskirts in a place where the safety situation and standards outside the campus may not be commensurate with what we will feel safe or any parent will feel safe. So the ecosystem that we have created is in my view, the most democratic, the most liberal, and the most progressive ecosystem. And I'll tell you how, because it's important for people to understand. First of all, within the university, the students have no restrictions to move across the campus to all and use of all spaces with no difference with regard to sex, excepting the student hostels. Barring the student hostel, every place on campus is available for students to use. And I don't even need to go into details that our students use it well. Men and women, boys and girls are happily in using the broader infrastructure on campus, where be it the dining halls, be it the student lounges, be it the music society, the theaters, be it the entire classrooms, be it the sports academy, both outside and inside infrastructure. So it is important to recognize that. Second, there are actually no limits on gate passes. First of all, that's incorrect information. It is actually based upon a parental consent. Just imagine for a moment with you that we have students from across India and many parts of the world, and high school students who have been most of the time, at least in India, lived entirely inside their house, have suddenly been brought into a campus in a rural part of India, and the parents are living across India and are minding their own business. The only reason, and I want to say this, the only reason the parents have chosen to come to this university after having checked our academic credentials is that they feel that this is a safe environment. And safety is only guaranteed inside. The moment a student leaves outside, and again, there are enough cases, we have 16 years of experience. The moment a student leaves outside the campus, there are multiple risks out there. Now, we are not saying you cannot go outside. All we are saying is that this is a responsibility that we cannot take. These are two different aspects of it. Today, a parent can give in writing to us that we have no problem. You can let our student, our son go or daughter go every day. We have no issues. So it is not correct that they have any restriction. The restrictions are imposed by the parents when it comes to their ability to leave the campus and go outside. As far as why we are a residential campus concerned, that's a choice we make, and many students, actually every year we lose out some students who chose not to stay on campus, and they cannot be our students. That's an institutional choice we have taken. There's no
That's a design choice.
That's a design choice. So you don't need to be a student here, and we tell this in advance. And so there are various such things. In fact, in the same vein, one can ask a question: why is the dining hall food vegetarian? That's a choice we have made. That's an institutional choice, and we tell the students even before that this is the choice you make when you are here, and that's part of the foundational choice. So those are things that. But I want to first say that our rules and regulations are lean and thin, and we have retained the character of a very liberal and progressive university where students are able to freely use and exercise their choices and opportunities in and around the campus within, so long as it's restricted within the girls and boys hostel on the one hand, or leaving the campus out.
So basically you're solving for safety, which is fair, and I agree with you, right? Like, this is not a tier 1 city. And number two, in terms of, let's say, the gate pass as a example, you guys are very lenient with that. It's on the parents, and it's a pact between the parents and the student to figure that out. So that's helpful, and I hope that answers questions. I think, okay, moving on to the next question, which I find very interesting. I really don't understand why wardens in all hostels consider themselves some army personnel. I've had 2 raids in my room this month alone. None of my roommates smoke or do anything on campus. They just randomly open the door and start going through our stuff. I get the reason behind raids, so this person is logical.
We don't call it raids, by the way. It's called student welfare interventions.
No, the students are calling it raids.
We use a more, respectable term.
Yeah, but I still feel wardens are way too harsh than they should be. I really want to know if there's a little possibility of leniency, since we're not all in schools now, and I'm pretty sure in every other college they don't randomly enter your room without respecting your privacy or telling you in advance.
Most of the time, we receive information about, let's say, activity or such things prevailing within a room. This need to enter into a room and to have both surprise checks and occasional checks is also part of an effort to create a safe community. Ultimately, our goal is to reduce the risks and vulnerability of the entire student community, including dealing with individuals who might have to seek other forms of intervention, including intervention from Sukoon or mental health intervention, because we simply cannot create a safe environment only in a theoretical sense. And we know very well that despite all the rules and regulations, there are opportunities when people will take efforts to violate those rules and regulations and even game the system. These student welfare interventions are precisely undertaken to protect the students.
Yeah. Basically, the high level message is, on campus, you have to stay within the campus rules. Of course, the liability lies with you.
Correct.
And outside campus, I mean, encouragement is to be safe. But
Yes.
then at the end of it, you're an adult, you do what you want to do.
Absolutely.
The last question, and I had to bring this up because this person's written, I highly doubt this is going to be a real talk with the VC, but in any case, it's actually going to be addressing student issues. Here are my questions. Number one, the new attendance policy is of no benefits to student. Why implement it?
I'll respond
Yeah.
quickly. First of all, attendance policy is not the purpose of any attendance policy is not only to benefit students. It's about three objectives. One is that it's accountability as far as institution is concerned. Second, regulatory compliance. We have several schools which are under the regulatory framework that we are supposed to provide who attends the classes. And the third and the most important thing is it actually has been undertaken with the students' interest in mind because we have used technology. Hitherto, what would happen is we would do a manual attendance system, like how universities have been doing for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You call Vidit, and then Vidit will say, yes, sir.
Huh.
And that was the attendance. Now what we have done, and the problem with that model is, it used to be the case that people will not be present and then will say later to the teacher that I was present, you didn't listen, or the teacher missed the name, or some teachers didn't take the attendance at that time, or when they took the attendance, the student had come, they're taking the attendance before the student had come, they missed it. All kinds of mess used to happen.
Yeah.
Now we have an amazing attendance system, which, by the way, is technology, so it will have its glitches. This is a transition semester. First time we have implemented it. In fact, faculty are also equally going through this process because here you have a window of registering your attendance through a technological platform, and it's very transparent.
Yeah.
You can't game it. So you have absolute sure shot. Neither the faculty member can use discretion to favor students, including their favorites, nor students can provide proxy attendance for somebody else, nor they can game the system and get attendance without being present. I'm not saying that this person was doing that. All I'm saying is this is actually the most transparent, efficient, effective way of taking attendance. This is going to become a true model, but I agree that the glitches of recognizing the face or recognizing this requires some technological understanding. In fact, our gate pass system is a very good one.
If it was mandatory to apply to JGLS, why apply it to the rest of us? Why not actually talk to students and come up with a policy suiting students
This is not
themselves?
true at all. So while JGLS is regulated by the Bar Council, all other schools are regulated by the University Grants Commission. They have an even tighter framework. So if sometimes people may not be familiar with these things. All these policies are implemented because of the regulatory and compliance matters. It's another matter that some of us genuinely feel it's actually a good thing. I mean, think about it. If students are paying so much fees to study here, what is wrong in expecting that they should attend 75% of their classes? Effectively, we are saying that 25% of the classes you can still miss. Even that's not a good thing. They should attend 100% of the classes. But we are giving room for you to miss the class because you still are missing out learning.
The second topic is there's an incredible amount of construction happening on campus during this semester. I think multiple questions around that. That hey, why is this happening? It's affecting our mental health, or it's affecting our ability to enjoy campus. What do you want to
No,
say to
I'll
the
say
students
that
about that?
first of all, it is again an inaccurate statement that there is incredible amount of construction happening. Let's be very clear
Yeah.
about it. There is one new academic block which is being constructed. But having said that, I am happy to accept guilty as charged because for the last 16 years we are constructing. So there is nothing new. Every year, without exception, we are constructing something or the other. That's a generational debt that all of us have to pay. And so I would like to tell the students that your sports complex, which you are enjoying today, and all the things, including the 6 squash courts, the large, basketball court and volleyball court and badminton courts, the shooting range, the swimming pool, which you are enjoying, and so many thank you notes that you have sent, the Sama and Samagam student lounges, the world-class library facilities, the Constitution Museum that you are so proud of, the state-of-the-art classrooms that you have all experiencing, everything has been built by construction only. I wish there is a magical wand that I can have where buildings can just appear in thin air.
Yeah.
Having said that, we have taken enormous efforts and continue to take enormous efforts to ensure that the individual inconveniences of students are addressed. First, most of the construction activity is happening and ought to happen during the time when students are in the academic block in the classes, and when they should be, in my view, they should be there at all time excepting when they are going to bed. Second, when they are in academic block, there is no sound for their construction activity. They are here. When they are in the playground, they can continue to play and enjoy. When they are in the sports academy, they can do all of that. I believe that a student should be spending their time in the room, going to sleep effectively, and our students actually end up sleeping much later when there is no construction activity happening. They end up sleeping beyond the midnight, and beyond the midnight, construction activity doesn't happen. So, in some ways, sometimes people tend to say things in a very generously, I would say
Nitpicking.
less conscious of the reality, more the sort of look and feel of it. It is true that in the last few weeks, we had made some important infrastructure interventions to address the issue of air conditioning and condensation in the campus, including the student housing blocks and the rooms. That during that time, to ensure that students do not suffer inconvenience, we actually suspended classes. One of the reasons why we suspended classes was effectively to overcome this particular challenge. Although the students had made their choices, to some of them to stay on campus, but either ways, we took that call. We also ensured that when these interventions happen beyond 10 p.m., they don't get undertaken, so that the convenience of the students are maintained. So in some ways, all I can say is, well, let me say this, the bright side of the future. By end of November, the new academic block will be completed, and at least in this part of the campus, construction is completed. But I also want to assure that the construction will continue for a very long time. The reality is, we are a growing institution. We have plans to move into STEM education. There will be parts of campus where we will again begin construction, and we will continue for years together because we will be expanding and creating more and more wonderful infrastructure for the benefit of our students.
Well, thank you, Professor Raj, for answering all these questions and keeping it very real. As promised, I will give you
Oh,
the
thank you.
questions for you to see later.
Absolutely.
And it's been a pleasure, Prof. Thank you. And, I hope to do this at least once a year or something like that.
Well, I absolutely enjoyed this conversation, and thank you very much for what you are doing. And I know that what you're doing with your colleagues in Sukoon has created a new imagination for providing high quality mental health services in India and for our own students. I know that this will shape their future, and it's been an absolutely delightful relationship between OP Jindal Global Units and Sukoon. It's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof.